Mr. Chairman, sir, I beg to move that the total provision of rupees 205 crore 10,589, supplementary demand number 5, with a head of account 2801 power 4801 capital outlay on power projects, etc., at page 9 of the list of supplementary demand be reduced by rupees 100. That is, the amount of the whole supplementary demand of 205 crore 10,589 to stand reduced by rupees 100.
Motion moved. Now you may initiate discussion.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I would like to be very brief and be specific, because the purpose of this supplementary demand is already reflected in the explanatory notes. All this whole amount is required as an additional support to enable the MECL to take over the loss under UDAY scheme for operational and financial turnaround of power distribution companies. Now, this particular demand obviously is guided by the objective. So therefore, in a nutshell, I would like to just make a submission to get all the necessary clarifications pertaining to the objective of this UDAY scheme. How far has we been able to achieve the outcomes, number one, in order to achieve the indicated objective, which are guided by the scheme itself. The overall quantum of this loan, because under the program, certain percentage of the whole debt has to be taken over by the state. Now, how far has the state government supported in terms of fulfilling the objective of this program since the time of implementation of this program, since this whole program was embarked upon till date, and the desired outcome, whether it is satisfactory or not yet, because the targeted outcomes are already enshrined in the guideline, which I don't want to elaborate in order to save as much time as possible. And the burden thereof on the state, because the DISCOMs are expected to create a turnaround and deliver efficiency in terms of ensuring that they no longer remain inefficient to have that kind of aggregate commercial and technical losses, including the both distribution and transmission losses, and the efficiency thereof, which are again required to be comprehensive from the realization of tariff, etc., so that the losses of the DISCOM, because these losses of the DISCOM and all other entities under power department are considered and they are aggregated in terms of the amount which is passed on as a part of the overhead expenditure of the entity, which will be again taken into consideration at the time of the DISCOM filing for a revised petition for tariff, revised tariff petition. So the cascading effect, the sequelae of effects of any inefficiency, despite the support, is passed on to the consumer. And the brunt is borne by all of us. That is the reason why the outcome has to be at least required to be quantified as to whether we are being able to achieve that kind of objective. So I think in a very nutshell, the House may be given this necessary enlightenment so that as we agree to allow such a huge amount of money to be spent for the purpose of implementing the scheme and to expect the desired end result and outcome, we are convinced that yes, we are on the right track. And the concerned entity is doing its job in the right earnest after getting such a huge infusion of support from the public exchequer. It's not a simple thing. If we look at the quantum of infusion of fund that has been extended to MECL over the years, in the recent years, and if the turnaround which is expected to be achieved does not happen, then as I have said, the burden will continue to be passed on to the consumers, because the revised tariff petition will take into consideration all these losses and as other overhead expenditure, and at the same time, the responsibility of the government to extend that kind of support, to rather shoulder the whole burden of the resultant loss of the distribution, which is to a great extent because of the inefficiency of the distribution company. So the inefficiency of the distribution company should not be allowed to go on once this support is extended from the scarce resources which is available under the consolidated fund of the state. So from the public exchequer, that much of money is going on. Then another point I would like to refer to in terms of the overall, because if we look at the transmission and distribution loss and compare with the aggregate technical and commercial loss, there's a huge gap. The distribution loss on the distribution and transmission has been to a great extent brought down because we have upgraded our transmission network, also distribution network, but the gap between the losses is quite huge because of the lack of efficiency which is reflected by the figure in as far as the aggregate technical and commercial losses, AT&C losses. So this itself shows that the distribution company's inefficiency, in spite of getting so much of support from the government. Now, what are the ways and means being put into place to pull up the concerned entities, having given so much of support? That is one part. And another thing is, now, realization of the tariff from the consumers. There is a need to improve this whole mechanism of tariff realization. In fact, I had to speak to the CMD to invoke the relevant provision of the Electricity Act 2003, where the relevant section says that if the distribution company have not served, the bill for the energy consumed consecutively for more than 2 years, then the distribution company cannot actually ask for any more payment. It's a very dangerous provision in the section. So therefore, for the kind of inefficiency which I cannot comprehend why it exists, even though this relevant section is there, even for 2 years, some of the villages have not been served the bill. After the whole process, before charging the electricity to connect the village, whose fault it is? Why shouldn't they be pulled up? Why will the state keep on bleeding for the inefficiency and negligence of these people? Therefore, accountability is crucial. Now, that is one part. So I would like to take a categorical assurance before we agree to such a huge support to be extended to MECL, to the distribution entity. Then another part where our experiences through whatever pilot project we attempted to, as per the mandate of the Electricity Act 2003, the franchisee model. Now, the franchisee model. Now, this franchise, the relevant provision under Electricity Act 2003, which provide the franchisee model, is being used in a manner which goes against the interests of the people of the state. Yes, it goes against the people of the state, Mr. Chairman, sir. Why I'm saying this is because we have taken advantage of this mandate of the law in as far as that section, relevant subsection and section giving the MECL distribution company the space to appoint franchisee. Consumers are allowed to come together, and on behalf of the consumers, the franchisee is given. A very successful model is pertaining to West Khasis Nongstoin. Please go back to the record. Our own people who represent the consumers, they were given the franchisee model. And that has withstood the test of time. It was one of the best successful franchisee model that existed. But what happened? Unfortunately, the people who were appointed as the franchisee by the distribution company, I was informed subsequently that they have discontinued. I wanted to know after a reasonable period of time, almost after 1 year. I was surprised that they have discontinued. Whereas that model was considered as one of the most successful model in the state after we embark upon this provision to really leverage upon. Then they told us that earlier the kind of margin of profit, no one will be able to do it because they have to employ people. It generates local employment from the local neighborhood, from amongst the consumers. So what a wonderful provision that Electricity Act 2003 have provided. But what they said was that earlier, the amount which was agreed upon was 15% of the total tariff realization will be passed on to the franchisee. This was reduced to 10% when it became not viable for the franchisee. They gave up. But subsequently, the DISCOM should have actually again engaged and then looked at, okay, if they are not agreeing for 10%, why is it? Where is your efficiency? The loss is more than 15%, 28%, 30% in terms of total aggregate and commercial losses. So therefore, Mr. Chairman, sir, the appointment of franchisee model by embarking upon this whole strategy that has been adopted lately by the DISCOM must be done away. All these companies from outside, with no sense of accountability and responsibility, no allegiance or loyalty to the interests of our people, it is an indirect entry for other business houses to enter the state, slowly replace and replace. We have a serious problem in the western, in respect of the plain belts of West Garo Hills. There is a serious problem. The franchisee model, which is presently in operation, is actually creating lots of frustration and anger with our consumers. I would like to therefore urge upon the government to relook at this. There is already a successful model which we have tried earlier, because the consumers can form into a cooperative society or whatever, they can themselves be a franchisee. Provision of the various provisions under the Electricity Act 2003 is so broad and so inclusive, and they are effectively designed. Therefore, I would like to urge the government to look at this, and we will engage. We will be willing to cooperate and support the DISCOM and the authorities to, engage with the consumers, help them, handhold them to again successfully partner with the DISCOM as franchises. I think that is one of the best model which will enable us to bring down that loss at the terminal part of our distribution of power and realization of the tariff. So may I therefore, with this brief submission, because I have been very specific, and my submission is that I want, a productive, action-oriented response based on this submission, based on this information that I have shared before this August House. So may I therefore, with this brief submission, expect the Honorable Minister in charge to take cognizance of this concern and see that these suggestions that I have given in regard to also the franchisee model, which should invariably involve the local consumers in different formats. It's available. It is completely elaborately reflected in the law itself. So with this few submission, I would like to get a positive response from the Honorable Minister in charge. And with this brief submission, I wait for the positive response.